your way in the feed. But first, back to Kevin and Olivia.
It's just the T and the B are reversed.
So, if it's...
Thanks, Layla.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Now, we cover video games here a lot on the show, and all too often we run into the stigma that games cause violent behavior. If you like Grand Theft Auto, you must be a ticking time bomb. That's my opinion, really.
You clearly are. But
kill everybody.
Just last week, though, Texas A&M University, they released a study that claims there is absolutely no correlation between games and the supposed harmful results. So, of course, some are scoffing at that claim because it goes against everything that they study.
That's true. But we want to know what you guys think at home. It is time for the poll questions. This is a very popular question, but we want to know what you guys think right now. Do video games breed violence?
I wonder what our audience is going to think about
that. They're going to say yes, and they're going to say turn off the games and throw them away.
That's it.
Vote at our website, g4tv.com/AOTS, or text your vote to G4TXT. That's 44898 to vote and register for AOTS Live News Alerts. Now, this is an important time to tell us what you really... I mean, I know we probably know what they're going to say. But
no, you're right. They're throwing their 360s out the window right now.
Right now.
It's mass exodus. Before we move on, actually, I got to mention last night's Heroes. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. We are live and officially taking a hiatus from jumping or even hopping after Sean Livingston's spill. Did you see that thing?
Yeah, I did.
Last time I checked, knees aren't supposed to go sideways.
Not quite. Now, coming up, we've got a douche commercial. No,
what?
You're not watching Oxygen. It's a fake spot that goes after the D-bags you hate. We'll show you the hilarious parody later on.
Yeah, but right now it's time for the only news you need to know. Here it is, folks. It's the feed.
Thanks, guys. I'm Layla Kaylee, and it's time to start the feed. If you're desperately awaiting Apple TV, we've got bad news. You'll have to wait a little longer. The $300 device, which is able to stream TV shows and movies from your Mac straight to your TV, was expected to hit stores this month. According to CNET, the release date has been pushed until mid to late March, and Apple would not give a reason for the delay. Let's hope it's worth the wait. If $1,000 seems like a lot for a Blu-ray player, save your money and wait for the summer. Sony has just unveiled the BDPS 300, which will cost $600. This model is a whopping $400 cheaper than the current player on the market. With this move, Sony is trying to stay competitive with Toshiba's HD DVD players, which run around $500. If you can't wait for the new Blu-ray player, you could just buy a PlayStation 3 right now. There's a new Sims game on the horizon, though this one's a Nintendo exclusive. EA has just announced My Sims, which will be coming to the Nintendo Wii and the DS this fall. The game promises even more customization than ever and interaction with the whole town of citizens. There's no word on whether or not your Miis will be available characters. Either way, expect many Sims to be drowned, electrocuted, and starved to death. And finally, we were all duped. It seems like a popular internet video seen on this show is a fake. Ryan Burke, who dumped his supposed girlfriend in front of a crowd of thousands, a vocal group, and cameras, confessed that the whole thing was a stunt. He claims he pulled this Valentine's Day prank to show the power of internet communities and how companies were willing to exploit them for money. It's unknown whether Ryan made any money himself. I wonder. Well, that's it for today, and if you're in the mood for some new music, check out our exclusive online video of San Diego pop punkers Unwritten Law. To see them perform an acoustic version of their smash hit, Seeing Red, go to g4tv.com/thefeed. I'm Layla Kaylee, and you've just been fed. Back to you guys.
Thank you, Layla. Now, listen, I know it sounds...
Welcome back to Attack of the Show. Earlier, we asked you, do video games breed violence? Well, according to our G4 bean counters, a whopping 94% of you think they don't. Now, let's go over to Kevin, who only gets violent when he plays E-rated games. Only then.
It's true, I broke a DS because of Nintendogs, but I'd rather not talk about it. You see, for years, folks, video games have been the media's new rock and roll. It's something that, well, it's something that's weird, and the kids are into it, and makes them all violent and disobedient. But is there any truth to that claim?
Gamers everywhere know that games and violence go hand in hand when it comes to the media. Last week, Texas A&M University released a study that stated there's no link between violent video games and real-life violent actions. The conclusion of their study states, quote, although violent video games appear to increase people's aggressive thoughts, violent games do not appear to increase aggressive behavior. end quote. But for every study stating there's no connection, 10 more will draw a big, bloody line straight from BFGs to IEDs. Is this the first step toward ending the blame for video games as the root of all evil? Or is it really too early to tell what effects violent games really have on our fragile little minds? Sexual. Achievement unlocked, it's The Loop.
Joining us tonight from Los Angeles, Adam Sessler, co-host of X-Play and spokesman for National Institute and Media and the family, Blois Olson. Gentlemen, welcome to The Loop. Blois, I'd like to start with you, sir. Last week, Texas A&M University, they released a study based on previous research that concludes that, as we said, while violent video games increase aggressive thoughts, they do not appear to increase aggressive behavior. Do you think they got the study right, Blois?
Well, first of all, I think it's pretty easy to do a study of studies, and that's what this was. There's no original research in this study, and I think that one of the key things was he tried to edge the research to say who was pro-game and who was anti-game, and I'd be curious who he thought was pro-game and anti-gamer in his research.
I think as though it's interesting that it's so tough to try to show causality between playing a game and engaging behavior, or really just experiencing any type of culture and then engaging in a certain type of behavior. It's not like that there's like a switch that you could identify has been flipped at a certain point when you've been engaging in that culture. And I think it really brings to light that this is really an impossible thing to try to prove, and at the end of the day, logic doesn't seem to bear out any of these conclusions that playing violent games do cause violent behavior.
Yeah, Blois.
Well, I think the research is still early, and so for us to conclude that 25 studies in a very small, short period of time, when we don't know the effects on kids, that we should stop researching.
But there's so many other studies of different types of culture that predated it. Obviously, Dr. Wortham's famous book, Seduction of the Innocent, was trying to prove that all this derelict behavior was being caused by comic books. It's something that we look at now and laugh at. Or Elvis's swiveling hips is supposed to bring about promiscuity. A lot of these problems that we're saying these cultures cause seem to predate the existence of these cultures. I think it's always there, but there's always a new alien youth culture that we can identify as being the result.
I didn't know that they actually studied Elvis's hips.
Well, I know young women definitely did.
Adam definitely studied it, and it's to blame for a lot in his life. But, Blois, let me ask you this then. If it's too early to tell if these studies are legit or accurate, or even if we can study this sort of matter at all, whenever you turn on CNN or MSNBC or Fox News, whenever there's a violent act, especially one that's committed by a youth, you get the overhead shot of the crime scene from the chopper, and that's immediately followed by B-roll of Doom or Quake or Grand Theft Auto, some other violent game. Why is that happening when others are saying, hey, look, you can't even trust these studies? Why is the media making that leap and that conclusion then?
You know, it's funny you say that, because I've started to watch that trend over the last 6 or 7 months. And actually, it's the video game media that asked the question first. The mainstream media is covering the incident itself, and then they'll go into potential causes. So it isn't a jump to conclusion. GamePolitics.com oftentimes within 15 minutes to an hour of an incident will say, will this have, an impact on violence in video games?
Sure. Adam, I would have to agree with that. I think, unfortunately, the gaming industry, especially people like in my position, become very defensive that before anything's even been said to be caused by a video game, we're suddenly jumping there to prove that it hasn't been, and that's probably not a good mind frame.
But now, Adam, Adam, let me ask, is that a Columbine effect, though? Is that something where we're immediately on the defensive, and so rather than wait for a CNN to point the finger and blame, and then we're automatically put on the D, the games industry itself has to come out and say, hold on, wait a minute, did this guy own a PSP? Well, he probably did if he was a young male.
Right. I mean, unfortunately, we are on the defensive because of the Columbine effect. It was very interesting to watch over the 3 days following that horrible day that the word Doom and Quake was first on the 5th page of the New York Times, then it moved to the 3rd page, and then it was smack dab in the first paragraph of the story about what was behind the Columbine shootings. Sure. And that just sort of precipitated this whole process. But really, it becomes so politically expedient, especially now that we're in an election year, that people will start to look to these games because they're alien to so many adults out there. They don't understand the language, they don't understand the culture, and so they become a very convenient place to blame all the ills that are happening in society with our children, instead of looking at what's probably really responsible, which is bad schooling, that there are no good after-school programs, and that there's a lot of strain being put on parents to raise their kids correctly because they have to work so many long hours just to keep things together.
Well, let's get back to the root of the issue, of course, which are the studies and these links between violent games and aggressive tendencies. So boys, for the sake of argument, let's say that despite the contradictory studies, it turns out that there is a definite link here. Let's say that violent games do, in fact, cause aggressive thoughts, which translate to aggressive behaviors. What would we want then? What should we expect to see happen if that study comes out? Would it be game developers stop making M-rated games? Would it be that we pull them from the shelves? What's the course of action if we prove there is a link?
Well, I think that's up to, public policymakers to decide. The key is that we continue to do research because this interactive media is growing by leaps and bounds, and that parents and children really pay attention to the games they're playing. We tell parents to watch what their kids watch and play what their kids play. And the National Institute supports all gaming and free speech. It's just the key that making sure the right people are playing the right games that are age appropriate. You take that age from 12 to 18 in a formative young teenage boy's mind. And we know through brain research that that is when judgment is determined.
Sure.
Now, if they have an overexposure to judgment, the wrong kinds of decisions in that 12 to 18 time frame, then they're probably going to have some difficulty making the right decisions later.
I completely agree. Don't keep the games off the shelves. Keep them out of the hands of those that are too young to play them. Thank you guys for both coming on. I want to thank Adam and Blois both for keeping us in the loop. Really appreciate your time, gentlemen. Listen, it's definitely still too early to really know what effect games have on the people who play them. And you can get stats and studies for both sides of the argument, but one thing that everyone seems to agree on here is that there are certain games that minors just shouldn't be playing. So instead of wasting time and money trying to figure out if too much Mario turns kids into serial killers, find out why they're playing M-rated games in the first place. And while it's easy to blame video games and point that finger, it's just as easy to blame bad parenting. Sorry. Olivia.
Kevin.
I was done with my argument.
He was done, and now it's back to me. We will be back. Stay with us, or I'll throw a brick through your window. That's right. Keep running, Pereira. Keep running. Sorry, everyone. I've been playing too much Paperboy on Xbox Live. What?
Coming up, we're taking a look at